You're listening to the Screaming Pods Network.
You know, out of all the people that you encounter on a daily basis, strangers are the most interesting. Strangers can become like just an acquaintance to you, or they could become your new best friend. Like when you were in college and you had a roommate. Did you ever have a roommate?
I had lots of roommates in college.
How was your luck with respect to roommates?
I didn't end up with like a satisfactory roommate situation until like my junior year of college.
Okay, so that's what, a good 3 years, right?
Yeah. I lived in a different housing situation every semester. I moved so much. I lived with strangers. I've gone in blind and things just kind of like escalated and got kind of weird. That's a story for another time. And then
That's a big risk, like just moving in with a stranger.
Right. I mean, but hey.
Sometimes it works out.
Sometimes it works out. You know, like the last roommate I ever lived with was a complete stranger, and we're still like.
That's awesome. See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like we just had dinner. I just had dinner with her in-laws the other day.
Right.
Like,
nice.
Yeah, she's fantastic, but it took a lot of attempts to find that right person to live with. And you know what's kind of also scary is you don't really know somebody until you're living with them. I lived with one of my best friends from high school, and it totally ruined the friendship. Like, she just turned into be somebody that I had no clue who this person was, really, until I'm with her 24/7.
It really is like the next stage of really having a relationship with anybody. You get to see them one-on-one, but like you don't get to see them when they're like home, you know? And
right.
like just on their own, you know? But that changes when you live with a person. And still, even after living with the person for so many years, you still may not know everything about them.
Right. These people have a way of just kind of entering your life and totally flipping it upside down. I mean, you never really know your friend's true intentions. You never really know the intentions of the person sitting next to you on the bench waiting for the bus. You don't really know somebody until it's too late sometimes.
Yeah, but you can't be too skeptical, or else that's what you become, paranoid, and you're a crazy person constantly looking over their shoulder.
Speaking of crazy person and being paranoid all the time, my name is Jill.
That couldn't have been a result of doing this podcast for almost 30 episodes now. And my name is Ben.
And thank you for joining us at the fire.
This episode, we're returning to the topic of stranger danger.
We'll be hearing 2 stories, different types of encounters with people who are involved in our everyday lives. First, we have Candice joining us, and Candice is going to share a story about the time she was drugged by her best friend.
I knew her since I was, I believe, 12 or 13. She had always been really nice. When you first met her, she was like the sweetest person you ever met. And her parents adopted 5 of her cousins, I want to say when she was like 14. And this kind of affected her in a really deep way. And that's when she started to rebel a little bit. Not like as much as she did when she was 18, but she would kind of sneak out here and there and start drinking here and there, but nothing too extreme. She would put on this like big facade in front of my mother to where she was this little Miss Goody Two-Shoes, and then as soon as we would leave, she would just be this completely different person. When her parents had adopted 5 cousins of hers, she just felt like her parents didn't love her in a way. I know we had talked about it before, and I tried telling her, that's not the case. Their parents are just wonderful people, and, you just got to see that they have love for all of you. So when we were both 18 and we were both partying together, she just let loose. I mean, her parents were pretty well off, and so they gave her anything she wanted. They gave her so much money. They gave her everything. She didn't really have any kind of curfew or anything, even before she was 18. And so I don't know, she just kind of went off the deep end a little bit. And I was there to see all of it. She had a lot of issues that she couldn't deal with mentally as well. She was a really good person to talk to. Like, with everything that I was going through, like with my parents' divorce and my mother being sick. I mean, my mother has had health problems since I was 10 years old. So with all of that, she was somebody I could always go to talk to, and she would always listen. Somebody I could trust, and somebody that I never thought would do anything to harm me. She was kind of like just my person I could go to for anything. And that's why me and her were always stuck at the hip together, and I never suspected that she had any malicious intent when it came to our friendship. It's sad because we were friends for so long, and then, stuff just kind of happened. So that night, she called me up and she told me that these guys that we knew, and we didn't know them very well, she said that they were having a kickback, just a few friends at their apartment, and she asked me if I wanted to come along with her and this other girl that she knew. And I said, yeah, no problem, I'll come along. And at the way to the party, we stopped and we got a pack of cigarettes, and I bought a soda, a fountain drink, and so we get to the party. And at this point, I had partied, but I was trying to take a break from partying and trying to focus on school because I was a senior in high school. Everybody at the kickback, they were smoking weed, and a few people were drinking, but nothing too crazy. And she was smoking weed, and she asked me if I wanted to smoke with her, and I told her no. And she was trying to convince me to smoke with her. I kept saying no, and finally she took a hit off of a bong, and she asked me if I could clear it for her, or if I wanted to clear it for her. And I appeased her, and I said, okay, fine, I'll at least do that. And I had smoked many times before, so this wouldn't even be enough to even make me super high or anything at that point. And she had asked for a drink of my soda from the gas station. So I handed it to her, and I had my back turned, and I was talking to somebody else at the kickback, and she had my drink for a good minute. And when I glanced back, she was messing with a straw, and I didn't pay any attention to it at the time. And then she finally gave it back to me, like a minute or two later. And I was drinking my drink, and it wasn't really paying attention to like how it tasted or anything. And about 30 minutes later, I started feeling really weird. I started feeling pretty high, and I didn't know why I was feeling high. I mean, I know I had like a little bit of weed, but it wasn't that kind of high. So I went outside to go smoke a cigarette, and I felt like I couldn't stand up. So I was laying on the porch, and I felt like all these like dark thoughts just came into my mind, and I felt really sick to my stomach, and I just started throwing up in the bushes. I couldn't get the strength to stand back up, and I remember thinking to myself, if I can just get the strength to run into the traffic and get hit by a car. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, my mindset just was not right, because I literally felt like I was dying. And I was thinking, all right, maybe I could wave down someone, flag someone down, because I knew nobody inside the apartment would take me seriously because I hadn't taken anything. And then Kay came outside because I was outside about for half an hour. And while I was outside, I had dialed my mom's phone number about 5 times and then hung up. And then I finally got through to my mom, told her what had happened, and I didn't know that my mom had called my brother to come get me. I don't even remember giving my mom directions to where I was at. That's how messed up I was. And then that's when Kay came outside. And I'm throwing up in the bushes, and she had to help me stand up, and she was holding me up. And out of nowhere, she goes, "Do you want to go to Denny's?" And I look at her, and I'm like, "Are you effing kidding me? Do I want to go to Denny's? I'm puking my effing guts out, you know?" And she's laughing while I'm throwing up in the bushes, and she thinks it's just hilarious. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this chick? What's going on? And so about not even like 10 minutes after I called my mom, my brother and my sister-in-law show up. And had my brother had a machete with him, and he goes running inside the apartment, threatening to kill whoever drugged me or whoever did anything to me. And then he looks at Kay and he tells her that he's going to effing kill her because he knew that had to have been her. And so my brother and my sister-in-law take me back to my mom, and I was throwing up and I couldn't stand up out of the bathroom. And my brother took a glance at my pupils, and they were completely dilated. You could barely see the color of my eye. They rushed me to the hospital, and they did like drug tests and everything. And I remember asking my sister-in-law, am I going to die? Am I okay? Because I was really scared. She said, you'll be fine. And I was yelling at the nurses and yelling at the doctors, threatening them, and that's not like me. I would never do anything like that. So they sedated me, and once I came out of it, I was told that they found MDMA in my system, and along with some other drugs. I don't remember what they were now because it was nearly 10 years ago. I found out the next day that Kay had given out free ecstasy to, I think, 4 other people, and out of those 4 people, 3 of them had to go to the hospital, and they were having seizures. To this day, I don't know why she did it. I don't know why anyone would do anything like that. It's something horrible, and I don't know. It still amazes me to this day that anyone would do anything like that. It's a real eye-opener about how humans can be towards one another. And it's just something that really bothers me to this day still. I mean, anytime I go out, I just guard my drink, or if I leave it somewhere, I just get another one because I'm not going to put myself at risk. I forgive her now, but I just don't ever want to see her again, honestly. Always guard your drink and don't be too trusting of people.
Thanks, Candice, for sharing your story. We're super glad you made it out of that all right. It's difficult when you realize a friend you've known for so long wasn't exactly showing you their true self. It makes you question yourself, your instincts, your decisions. You start replaying in your mind all of your most recent interactions and think, how could I miss this?
Candice one day hopes to start an organization to help spread awareness on this topic. And if you want to follow Candice's journey, hit up our website at thefire.com and snag her contact info.
Sometimes first impressions aren't always what they seem. Next is the story of one Redditor's encounter with stranger danger, meeting her roommate's boyfriend for the first time, and later finding out he isn't a stranger at all.
So the summer after I graduated high school, I was still living at home. I was late one night and I was packing for a camping trip with some of my friends. It was unbelievably hot, so I had the window open and I just sat on my bed and I was folding clothes. It was around 2 a.m, and the next thing I knew, there was a hand that came through that gap between the screen and my window. I screamed and the hand just flew back and I was stunned. A part of me wondered, was my little brother just pranking me? So I got up and I looked out the window, and I just saw the figure of a man staring back at me. I ran into my brother's room, and he was just in there playing video games, but he stopped, and we called the police, and they came and they searched the area. They found nothing. They just warned me and my parents to lock the windows and doors, and then they left. We were still pretty shaken up, and my mom had a feeling that he would come back, and it turns out that my mother's intuition was right. She went outside and she waited on the back porch, and after like 20 minutes, she saw a man dressed in black just slink into our backyard along the tree line. And he hid behind a tree for a few seconds, and then he ran to a different tree and hid there, and he just kept slowly working his way back towards my window. And my mom yelled something to him, and he just kind of took off running, but the police ended up coming back out and just found no trace of anyone. I never opened that window again, not even the curtains. My parents installed some motion detecting lights, and it seemed to just be the end of whatever that was. About 6 months later, my friend and I got an apartment downtown together, and we were really excited. This was our first place on our own. The apartment wasn't exactly the best quality, but it was really fun to be living in the city. The only downside was that there was street parking only, and after a few weeks, my car was broken into. Nothing was taken, but a single rose sat on the passenger seat. It was really creepy, but I vowed to be vigilant and safe, so I always tried to park close to the entrance just near the lights. Often it was difficult to get those spots, so I'd have to park farther away and on the darker streets. Things quickly began escalating at this point. My car was broken into at least once a week, and most of the time a flower was left, and I always threw it on the ground. But one time, a pair of men's underwear was left in my car. And even more creepy, a bag of Tootsie Rolls. And those are my favorite candy. So this made me wonder, does this person know me personally? I really started to become suspicious of everyone. There was laundry in the basement of the apartment, and one day I went down to get a load that was finished drying, and I started to fold. I realized all of my undergarments, my bras, my panties, they were gone. In another week, I had a male friend over from school. His tires got slashed during his visit. By the time the first letter arrived, I had already started making plans to move elsewhere. The letter described a love for me that had been going on for years, and he noted things that proved that he'd been watching me closely. I was able to arrange another friend taking over my lease, and I moved in with a different friend on the other side of the city. It was a secured building, had an underground parking garage, and was only accessible to tenants. So I felt much more secure, and the extra money spent was well worth the peace of mind. Things were quiet for a few months, and then my roommate got a boyfriend. Most of us were wary of Ashley's new boyfriend from the beginning. For one, they met on MySpace, and he reached out to her. Another reason is that this new boyfriend, Matt, was extremely good looking, and while Ashley's a wonderful person, she just wasn't the type that you would typically expect someone like him to date. And Ashley was thrilled. She'd never had a boyfriend and felt like he was her Prince Charming. I thought he was weird and creepy from the beginning. He was on the quiet side and always seemed to be sporting an uncomfortable, leering smile. And it was really difficult to carry on any sort of conversation with him because he'd always make it really weird with some random facts that were completely unrelated to whatever we were talking about. I deleted my MySpace when the initial stalking began, and I created a dummy account to learn more about Matt. And it didn't look like he really knew any of his MySpace friends in real life. There were only pictures of himself, and the rest of the information on his page was pretty vague. My friends and I gently tried to discourage Ashley from seeing Matt. He technically hadn't done anything wrong, but he was just so strange. And she would immediately get defensive and would shut the conversation down. And Matt started to spend more time at the apartment, and I found myself finding any excuse to avoid coming home. And well, one day I came home from work and found Matt on my couch alone, drinking a beer. Ashley had been called into work and she told him that he could just hang out, and I was furious because I just didn't want to spend any time with him. I just grabbed a beer and a snack and I headed over to my room and shut the door. About 30 minutes or so, he knocked on the door and suggested that maybe we watch some TV and get to know each other because we both really loved Ashley. And I didn't want to, but I decided that maybe I needed to give it a try. I mean, he put on a movie and I really just tried to focus because I didn't want to talk. And then at one point, I glanced over at Matt and he was just staring at me with a smile on his face. And I snapped a "what" at him, and he just continued smiling and said, "I just can't believe it." And I asked him, "Believe what?" And he said nothing and went back to watching the movie, and he still had that smile on his face. I had no idea what he was talking about, and the interaction had every hair standing up on my body. I just excused myself and locked the door to my room. Another month or so went by, and I had managed to avoid going home for much anything beyond sleep or showering. And Matt practically lived there and even brought a bunch of his things into Ashley's room. I didn't really want to make the move again, but I was beginning to look for other options. On their 6-month anniversary, I saw a huge bouquet of flowers sitting on the table and an already open card that was propped next to it. And I rolled my eyes and I began to leave, and I decided to see what the weirdo wrote to her. And when I opened the card, my heart started beating through my chest. Without even reading the words he wrote, I was shaking. The handwriting was exactly the same handwriting that my stalker had. I kept the notes as evidence and I dug them out of my desk for a comparison. And the handwriting was so unique and identical. Matt definitely was the stalker. So I called the police at first, and as they were on their way, I called Ashley and I asked her to come over. And she was at work, but she said she'd be there when she could. And I was terrified to tell her because I knew she would be just shattered. The police took a statement from me and actually went to Ashley's work to get more information from her, and they ended up breaking the news. Apparently, Ashley called Matt and left a furious message, even though the cops told her not to say anything. And he completely disappeared after that. There was no Matt or anyone matching his resemblance at the place he said that he'd worked. Ashley had never been to his apartment because he said he'd been staying with friends while trying to save money for a trip to Europe. His family lived out of state, and she said that she'd never met a friend of his because they'd all had falling outs because he was choosing to spend so much time with Ashley. How convenient. And it was just lies and lies and lies in the end, and she was dating a complete stranger. When we went through Matt's things, he had left everything when he disappeared, and Ashley and I decided to go through it all. There was a duffel bag and it was full of gym clothes, but in one of the compartments, there were about 10 pictures of me. They were all taken from far away, with the exception of one of me sleeping. And the sheets were current, so I knew it had to be the current apartment, just before I had started to lock my bedroom door. A few pictures dated back to before the incident at my parents' house, which made us think that it was him as well. 2 pairs of my missing underwear were in there, and I shudder to think what he did with the rest. A Starbucks lid with my red lipstick marks on it, a necklace I hadn't even noticed was missing, and a few other sick random souvenirs were also in his gym bag. The police never tracked him down. I decided to accept an opportunity overseas that I'd been considering and got the hell out of there. And unfortunately, Ashley and I quickly drifted apart. She had a really hard time accepting that her first love was with a complete psycho, and I think I had some underlying anger, maybe misplaced, for believing all of his lies and letting him into our lives. I don't know what his end game was. Like, would he have tried to hurt me? Was he just content with being in my world? And I guess I'll never know. Being stalked changes you. Even when I live across the world, I look over my shoulder everywhere I go. I still have no social media accounts attached to my real name. I'm married with children, and I know that he moved on to torment some other poor woman. But every time I visit my hometown, I'm tense and I keep a low profile. part of me always worries that Matt will resurface again.
Human nature can be very dark and disturbing. The fact that we even have the term stranger danger is horrifying itself.
And you truly never know who in your life is a stranger. I mean, you like to think you know your friends, you like to think you know your family, and even the people that you're living with. But the truth is, you never really know who somebody else is.
That's true. I mean, I don't know if I would say a lot of families probably have like family secrets, like,
Oh, yeah.
There are things you don't talk about certain family members, it's just.
Or things that everybody likes to talk about behind certain family members' backs.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, the whole story, your whole self is never truly revealed, I would say.
If you have any family secrets or scary, spooky experiences or your own run-in with a stalker, let us know. We want to hear about it. Send us a note, drop us a line, admin@thefire.com, or you can submit your story on our website at thefire.com.
And if you enjoyed this episode, tell your friends, find us on iTunes and rate and review. Both of those things would really help a small podcast like us.
And if you think we're cool and you want to follow our journey, check us out on Twitter @_the_fire. Stay up to date on all of our spooky podcast happenings. You can also follow my personal Instagram. I post some fun little previews and teasers of upcoming shows and all that good stuff. And a lot of food. I post a lot about food too. And my animals.
Pictures of, dog and the cat. Yeah, you can't find me on any of them. I'll say it again. But yeah, you can email us if you want to get in touch with me.
Yeah, Ben's pretty cool, I guess.
Once again, thank you for joining us at The Fire. My name is Ben.
And this is Jill.
We'll see you next time.
At The Fire. This episode's music was brought to you by Lee Rosevere, 3 Chain Links, Daniel Birch, Alastar Cooper, The Insider, and Raphael Archangel. You can find their music and more at freemusicarchive.org.
You're listening to the Screaming Pods Network.